All right, we are back here on the Just End the Suffering podcast, talking college basketball. We're in February. Join me today for what seems like his monthly residency on the podcast, the host of the Seeing Red podcast, Troy Mauriello. Troy, how are you?
Thank you for having me on. It's always a pleasure coming in once a month, and like we said before, looking forward to March. We get to do this a little bit more frequently as well.
Yeah, heads up for you podcast listeners. Obviously, you're going through football mode right now with the football season start wrapping up. We're getting ready for the Super Bowl here, but come March, there's gonna be a lot of college basketball, especially since it looks like the baseball people can't get out of their own way in the lockout. So we'll have more college basketball coverage coming your way.
Yes, March Madness is always the big focus for sure, but I think that maybe gets a little bit heightened this year when we probably won't even have baseball games to look forward to. So definitely looking forward to March.
Yeah, absolutely. The last time we talked was right after the new year. And I think for me, I want to talk a little bit some of the headlines here. I think the big thing for me is that, the Omicron surge we were being plagued with the first time. I feel like it's pretty much gone away. I feel like at most I see maybe one or two games a week postponed where we talk about closer to like a third of them at that point. I feel like we've gotten a lot better in that case.
Yeah. At that point, the last time that we spoke, I think we said it felt like there hasn't been like a consistent schedule in like 2 or 3 weeks. From like mid December to early January. But yeah, I think that we've kind of passed through that wave now. Seems like I think most teams probably had so many infections that it's not really possible for them to have games canceled now. But we got out of the way. Hopefully, we're past that. Hopefully, it doesn't come back up now for the last 2 months of the season, and we can just enjoy games. But like you said, we're really not seeing that many postponements or cancellations, which is always a good thing in these times.
Yeah, we're getting all the makeup games thrown in here too. So you're getting more games every week, which is good for us, but not as good for the teams.
Yeah, exactly. That a little bit less rest for those guys, probably some tired legs. But yeah, for in terms of a viewing standpoint, for us sitting at home on our couches, there's a big game to watch almost every single night. You got teams playing on Monday and then playing again on Thursday. On 2 days rest. You got teams playing Sundays and Tuesdays. It's awesome. It's really fun for the viewers for sure.
Yeah, I mean, last night we were recording on Wednesday, February 2nd. Last night alone, we had some good games. We had, the Alabama Auburn clash, Providence St. John's. That's unfortunate for you, the Johnnies lost. And my favorite one here, the atmosphere at Texas Tech when Chris Beard comes back and the fan base out there probably as loud as I've ever seen for a college basketball regular season game.
Yeah. You gotta feel happy for Texas Tech, right? They get a little measure of revenge on Chris Beard in Texas. Yeah, that was a really cool environment, a really cool atmosphere for sure. And you see that type of stuff sometimes in college sports, that hatred for a guy coming back. The videos with the team bus rolling in and all the students kind of flipping it off. That was really fun. And that just kind of adds to the rivalry of these games. And yeah, like you mentioned, that was a really cool environment, and good for them to get the win, to get a little bit of revenge on their former coach. I don't know if that makes up totally for the sting, although Texas Tech seems to be in a pretty good spot right now. So I don't know if they're entirely missing him too much. And his tenure at Texas so far hasn't been all that successful. So I think Texas Tech, as of right now, at least, has the last laugh.
Yeah, for sure. Let's stay in the SEC in the Big 12 for a bit because obviously you're coming off the weekend here. We had the big Big 12 SEC challenge, and a lot of these games were a lot of fun. So I know you're keeping an eye on some of these. So, what was your big takeaway from that challenge?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a ton of good games. Of course, Oklahoma, Auburn, Alabama upsetting Baylor was a big one. I think that the headline, of course, though, is Kentucky going into Kansas and just really blowing out Kansas, up by 20 at the half, ends up winning, I think, by 18 in that game. Kentucky's a team that I like going into the season for sure. And they had the expectations going into the year, but they weren't like fully on my radar in terms of being like a national contender, I guess I would say. That's the kind of performance that really, for fans like me who maybe aren't watching every single game, locked into every single Kentucky game or every single SEC game, that's the type of game that really puts yourself on like the national radar for a lot of fans, to go into Kansas and to dominate a Kansas team that I thought is a national title contender. And I still do think that they are a national title contender. For Kentucky to do that was really, really impressive. So it was, like you said, it was a great day of games, a lot of really fun games, but I think that the headline for sure is Kentucky blowing out Kansas on the road.
Yeah, and that's not something that happens very often because Kansas is one of, if not the best home court advantages in college basketball. Like nobody goes to the Fog and usually wins, let alone goes and blows out Kansas. That almost never happens.
Yeah, exactly. That's what made it so impressive, is that never really even felt like much of a game. So that that was big for Kentucky. And just, in terms of the Big 12 SEC in general, I love that they play it kind of like late in the season. It always feels like it's the last weekend of January, the last Saturday of January. I love that they do that because you get, the fully formed teams, no one is still trying to like round into form at that point. The teams are pretty much who they are. It's not like these other, the Big 10, ACC, the Gavitt games, the Big 12, Big East, that are played in November and December, where you kind of still have teams figuring out their rotations, figuring out their lineups. By the end of January, that's all formed. We know who's good. We know who's not so good. I love that they do that. It's always like a nice change of pace, at the end of January, where we're kind of in the flow of conference play. And then there's that one weekend where we have all these new and fresh matchups. That's always fun for me.
Yeah, I think two other games I'll throw out here from the challenge that also stuck out to me. I'm going to save the Alabama thing for a bit because Alabama we have to talk about by itself because they're one of the strangest teams in the country this season.
Yeah.
I'm going to say TCU picking up the win at home against LSU is big. I think that program really needed that win. And I think that the Horned Frogs are getting as close to like getting off the bubble as possible in there. And the other one here is how the hell Texas did not blow that game against Tennessee when they were up so much. And then I think they're outscored something like 20-2 down the stretch and only won by a point. Like that's not a good reflection on the Longhorns.
No, yeah, and like I said, it just they haven't really like clicked all season long. It feels like Texas, they haven't. I thought that they were going to be a top 10 team all season long, and they just haven't looked like it. Like you said, they do escape with the win there, but then Tuesday night they lose at Texas Tech in a game that they were never really in my opinion. So they just haven't really clicked all season long for me. A team that's really been disappointing in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And now I could sort of go forward here. Like we talked last time, we've had a lot of guys like, who is the best team? Like, is it Duke? Is it Purdue? Is it Kansas? Is it Baylor? Right now, it seems like we have finally two front runners here. Auburn and Gonzaga sort of started to pull away from the rest of the pack. They are 1-2 in the polls. Gonzaga was number one. Auburn passed them after their big win against Kentucky a couple weeks ago. They stayed at the top of the poll. So you had to put your chip on one. Say who is the best team in the country?
Yeah, so I do think that Auburn right now is the best team in the country. I don't think that's I just don't know how you would argue against it. What are they've won 18 in a row. They haven't lost a game since late November, and it was a double overtime loss. It's their only loss of the season. Like I don't know, they play in a power conference. They play in one of the better conferences in America in the SEC. I don't know how you argue against Auburn not being the best team in the country right now, at least. But if I'm picking a team to win the national title, I still think I'd go with Gonzaga just because I know that they've done it. I would pick Gonzaga to be the national title favorite at this point, but I do think that right now on February 2nd, Auburn is the best team in the country. I do think that's going to change as we go into March. Maybe they've peaked a little bit too early. Maybe they're playing their best basketball a little too early. Not to say that they're not going to be, a number one or number two seed and obviously be poised for a deep run. But if I was picking a favorite to win the national title, I think I'd still go with Gonzaga. I do think that I checked the odds today. I do think that Gonzaga is still the national title favorite at like 5 or 6 to 1, while Auburn is a little bit lower, like 8 to 1. So I would still go with Gonzaga in terms of the national title picture. But right now, I do think Auburn's better. But that's the fun thing about this season, right? Is like we do have like, I don't know, 10 teams that you could say would win the national or could win the national title this year. Where, last year it's always fun college basketball, but last year was really Gonzaga, Baylor, and then, a pretty steep drop off between everyone else. This year, you could make the case for, I would say like 10 teams, maybe at least 10 teams that, if they get hot at the right time, they can reel off 6 wins and win it all. And that's always fun. That's always fun filling out the brackets when you have, a bracket pool that has, 10 different teams as national champions. That's always a more of a fun watch. And I think that's kind of where this season is headed, where like, yes, you have your favorites, but there's a lot of teams that are in the mix that you could make a case for to win the national title.
Yeah, for sure. This is not 2019 where, it's Duke or the field. I felt like the bracket was like,
yeah.
I'm glad you brought the odds up here because I'm going to share the screen here. I did go to FanDuel and you're talking about the odds here, and you were right that Gonzaga is favored right now. They are plus 600 to win. Auburn number 2 plus 800. I'm happy to say I did walk in on Auburn at plus 1300 a couple weeks ago as a future.
Ooh, okay, very nice, very nice.
Yeah, another one I'll throw out here in the one that I like here. I got UCLA at a plus 2200 before they beat Arizona, so that's another number I'm happy I locked in.
Yeah, I wanted to get UCLA. I did not do it. Even now, I feel like 16 to 1 is a little bit high for them. They were team in the Final Four last year. UCLA, they were kind of battle tested. those odds are a little odd to me. I would even at 16-1, I would consider taking UCLA as like a little bit of a dark horse.
Yeah, we'll get to UCLA in a little bit here. When I start talking about some teams that have been towards the top, they have not done as well for various reasons here because they've seen question all of them. I want to start with Duke, which obviously coming off in the start of their season, they beat Gonzaga in Vegas. Everybody's like all on them. They go lose Ohio State, and then they have sort of been sleepwalking through, I would say, mediocre ECC where they've lost a couple of times. They played close games against teams really shouldn't. They've won by 2 at home against Clemson. And I don't know what it is, but like, I forget who said it, but the metaphor I think is great. It's like Duke tends to play with their food a bit too much. And like, that's something that scares the hell out of me against a March Madness scenario here.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that's absolutely right. I think that they know that they're the best team in the ACC and they're really like the only true contender out of the ACC, I think. And like you mentioned, I think it might be kind of hard for them to get up for some of these games. You would hope that they get up for their next game at UNC, but some of these matchups, against Louisville and Notre Dame, who's good this season actually, but like it just might be hard for them to get up. And like you said, in a tournament setting, obviously you would hope that you're up for every game, but if you do play with your food, like you mentioned, if you can't put teams away, if you can't close out, if you're up by 10 with 8 minutes to go and you can't put that game away, that's how you lose games. That's how you get picked off in March when you can't close these games out, when you can't pull away. And yeah, it does. Maybe it does feel like they've been sleepwalking a little bit, but that's definitely a concerning trend for March for a team that hasn't really just been able to like hit on that next gear and really pull away from some teams that they should be pulling away from in the ACC because they're clearly the best team in the ACC by far.
Yeah, you look at that league. I mean, you and I complain about that league a lot. That league is very bad, and the fact that like we're talking about them possibly having 5 teams bothers me no end. But you see the class of teams they're dealing with here. It's like you look at where they are compared to everyone else who's down here. You're sitting here going, why aren't they going 18-2 in the ACC, easily cruising the 1 line? Now we're talking about them more possibly as a 3 seed, which makes no sense.
Yeah, exactly. That when you look at who's in the ACC this season, like we mentioned, there's really no national title contenders outside of Duke. You've got Virginia, Florida State, Louisville, all feeling like they have down years. Syracuse isn't really very good this season either. A lot of teams are having down years. Even UNC who's 8-3 in the conference right now. Like I still don't think that they're like much of a threat nationally. So yeah, like you just feel like Duke should be kind of running away with that conference a lot more than they are. And it should be feeling like it's one of those years where Duke, like you mentioned, wins like 16, 17 games in the conference and gets that 1 seed. And it just hasn't really fully clicked for them yet. I do think that they'll be okay, but it just hasn't fully clicked for them just yet.
The team I'm concerned about is one. I think this is the one that you and I put the jinx on here. We put the jinx on Purdue because we talked about them after their performance in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. They dominated Florida State. Said, "Oh, this is the favorite. They went number 1. They're going to win the Big Ten. They're going to win the national championship." Since then, they've had. I want to say they've been up and down. I mean, the overall record looks great. They're 18-3. They're 7-3 in the Big Ten. But I mean, they lose at the buzzer to Rutgers and the overtime beat NC State. They lose to Wisconsin at home. They struggle against Penn State. They struggle against Ohio State. They nearly blow that huge lead. It feels like, again, I know the Big Ten is better league, but I feel like Purdue should be playing better than they are.
Yeah, even that game against Ohio State where Jaden Ivey hits the buzzer beater or the shot at the end of the game there. Yeah, that was what they had to. I turned that game off. I told you I shut that game off when they were up by 20 in the second half, and then I turned it back on, and it was a minute to go, and they were up by 3 or something. At home against a good Ohio State team, don't get me wrong, but yeah, that's like a weird performance. That's even a game where you win it and you're just kind of like, do I even feel good about that game? I still do think that Purdue is one of my national title contenders. I still think that they're capable of going on a run just because they have so much depth. They have so many guys, I think, on that team that can score like 10, 15, 20 points a game. And I love their depth, but yeah, they are just maybe hitting a little bit of a rough patch here. They maybe have gotten it back on track with a couple of wins in a row. And if you look at their upcoming schedule, Minnesota and then Michigan, those are 2 winnable games, I would say, to maybe really right the ship now and start to put together a legitimate winning streak for them. But yeah, it's been kind of up and down for them. I would hope that they are, more rounded into form now as we go into March, because I still think that they are one of my national title contenders for sure.
Yeah, Ohio State game, I looked it up here. They were up 52-32 with 14:39 to go, and that ends up being a 3-point game. They need to win the buzzer. That's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, everyone's going to blow a lead at some point, but a 20-point lead at home to need a buzzer beater, that's the game where, like, I mean, I think, like, as bad about a team that you can feel in a buzzer beater win, that's about it, I think, for that one.
Yeah, it almost felt a bit like the Ram game in the second round of the playoffs against Tampa Bay, where they blow the huge lead and they still find a way to win. So that's when you hope that Purdue follows the Ram lead and just recovers and they're in the Final Four. You don't know that yet.
Yeah, exactly. Not the best feeling after that one.
The third one I want to mention here is Kansas, which obviously they looked like, I think until about last week, they were going to be on the one line up there with Baylor and some of the other teams in their league. And then of late, I mean, they get trounced by Kentucky, need double overtime, beat Texas Tech. They narrowly win a couple of road games against K-State and Oklahoma, are not two of the strongest teams in this league.
Yeah.
I know that they had a good win last night. They beat Iowa State by 9 without Ochai Agbaji, which is impressive. But do you feel Kansas is trending the wrong way?
I would have, if you asked me this 24 hours, I would have said yes. 24 hours ago, I would have said yes. I was really impressed with them last night against Iowa State. Like you said, missing Ochai Agbaji, winning that game against, I think, a really, like, desperate Iowa State team who's now, I think, 3-6 in the Big 12. Yeah, like, that was an impressive game for them last night. That's the type of game that can not, like, turn a season around, because I don't think their season was heading like nowhere, but that's an impressive win on the road in a really tough environment out there in Ames. To go out there and get that win without your best player, a guy who's averaging 20 something points a game, that was really, really impressive. That's, dealing with some adversity on the road. So I do think that maybe has helped them right the ship. I was impressed with that. After the blowout loss against Kentucky, and just looking at their schedule right now, if they would have dropped that game, they could have been, looking at a somewhat of an extended losing streak. They got Baylor this weekend, and then they go on the road against Texas. And I know that we just kind of ripped Texas a little bit, but that's not an easy game either. So, in the Big 12, it's a good conference. It's got a couple of good teams at the top. That was a big win, I think, last night for Kansas to kind of right the ship and to avoid, a 3-4 game losing streak after that really horrible performance on Saturday. So they impressed me a lot last night. I do think that they're on the right path. And I will say this, of the three teams that we just mentioned, Duke, Kansas, and Purdue, I still think that I would say two of them are still making the Final Four this year. I still, depending on how the bracket shapes up, I would still pick two of those three to go to the Final Four. I think Kansas is one of, if not the best teams in the country. I'm not as high on Duke, and as you know, I love Purdue. So I would still say two of those teams are I would pick to go to the Final Four right now that we just mentioned, despite their recent struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I want to get to probably the most fascinating team in the country right now, which is Alabama, because you never know what version of them you're going to see on a given day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they start off the season 8-1. They beat Gonzaga and Houston back to back, and their one loss that is to Iona in the ESPN Events Invitation in Orlando. And since then, these are some of the results that they've had. They lose at Memphis. That result has gotten much worse since then.
Yeah.
Memphis has really fallen off a cliff.
Uh-huh.
They add the bye game against Davidson. They lose at a last minute thing, replacement for Colorado State, and Colorado State had COVID issues. They beat Tennessee at home. They lose to Missouri at Missouri by 6. They lose at Mississippi State by 2. Beat LSU at home by 3. Lose to Georgia by 6 at Georgia. Beat Baylor 87-78. Like, what the hell do you make of this team?
Yeah, if you want to like sum up their season, I think it would be their 2 games last week, right? They lose to a Georgia team that stinks, and then they go and they beat Baylor, who's a national title contender. Yeah, they are just like the quintessential college basketball team where you can't figure them out. They could beat anybody, they can lose to anybody. I mean, there's been points of their season where I've been like, wow, this team is really good. This is like a top 15, top 10 team. After they beat Gonzaga, I was like, man, this team is going to be a national title contender. The way that they looked in that Gonzaga game, I believe they had like a big lead in that game. I think Gonzaga made a little bit of a comeback, but yeah. And then they have games like you mentioned against Memphis and against Mississippi State and against Georgia, where it's just like, is this even a tournament team? Like, are they even going to be in the field of 64? It's been fascinating how up and down they've been. And yeah, they're just like the definition of a college basketball team. And, that's what makes it kind of fun in March. I'm sure the Alabama fans don't love it, but I think that, if you're asking me one team that it wouldn't surprise me if they lost their first round game or if they made like an Elite 8 run, it would be Alabama. Like, nothing would surprise me with them. Like I said, they can get picked off in the first round, depending on who they play, or they can, rattle off 3 or 4 straight wins against good opponents and find themselves in a regional final. Literally nothing at this point would surprise me with them. And yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the rest of their season shapes up. But yeah, if you're looking for like a little snapshot of their season, just look at last week losing to Georgia and then beating Baylor. That's pretty much how it's been for them all season long.
Yeah, that team to me, and I mean, obviously, if you're there are a couple of teams in here like Iona and Davidson who are really hoping Alabama like stabilize
Yeah.
themselves because that's basically their whole resume. It's like their win over Alabama. Like Iona's on neutral floor. Like Davidson's technically on neutral floor, but it's in Alabama, so I kind of more as a road game here. But
Mhm.
like Alabama, I mean, they're scheduled the rest of the way. They have Kentucky Saturday at home. They go to Ole Miss, Arkansas, Mississippi State, at Kentucky, at Vanderbilt, South Carolina, Texas A&M, at LSU. It's a good mix of like top teams and landmines in there.
Yeah, exactly. And knowing them, they'll probably like sweep Kentucky and then lose to like Vanderbilt and Mississippi State at home. Then knowing how their season has gone so far, nothing would surprise me with them.
Yeah, and I'm telling you right now, like they are gonna be in that 8-9 game. I'm calling that for a fact. And like whoever draws in the second round is gonna be terrified.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's like I said, like they could lose that 8-9 game. They could get knocked out in the first round. That wouldn't shock me. And yeah, if they played a 1 seed, I mean they've beaten Gonzaga already, who is on the 1 line. Yeah, they could absolutely upset a 1 seed. I bet you're going to see a lot of people if they are on that 8-9 game picking them, or even if they're in like a 7-10, picking them to beat a 1 or 2 seed in the second round. You're going to see a lot of people with that. That's going to be like the trendy pick on the brackets, I bet.
Absolutely. Now let's go ahead to go out to the Pac-12 for a minute here because UCLA and Arizona sort of separate themselves at the top of that league. USC, I don't buy. They have too many weird results. I mean, they got swept by Stanford. That tells you kind of all you need to know right there about how good USC is. But we saw them play last week at Pauley Pavilion. UCLA wins by 16. They had a break. Arizona is playing their third game in 5 days. So they have a rematch tomorrow in Arizona here. So like which of those teams do you like better from what you've seen?
Yeah, I'm still on UCLA's bandwagon. It's just I don't know. I think maybe it's East Coast bias or something because it's not like Arizona has gotten a ton of the headlines either, but it just feels like UCLA has really flown under the radar for sure. And of course, they're playing games at 10, 11 o'clock at night. They're not going to get as much shine as the East Coast teams for sure. But this is still a team that I think almost everyone said was the Final Four team going into the season. And largely they've delivered on it. What are they? They're 16-2 on the season. In my opinion, they've basically lived up to expectations in terms of what we thought they were going to be. I still do think that they're the best team in this conference. They have the win over Arizona. Going to be a really fun game coming up as well. Like you mentioned, I think USC has kind of maybe regressed a little bit to that clear third best team in the Pac-12. But if I was picking, UCLA versus Arizona, I'm still going with UCLA. I saw Arizona play this weekend against Arizona State. They look really good. I know Arizona State stinks this year, but I'm still on the UCLA bandwagon. I still do think that they're a team that is definitely contending for a Final Four. I think I picked them to go to the Final Four earlier in the season, so they're still my pick as the best team in the Pac-12. Of course, that can change as the season goes on, but as of right now, I think I would still go with UCLA over Arizona.
I'm with you. Obviously, I'm a bit biased. I have the shekels on UCLA right now to win the championship. So as a little factor in here. But I'll also point out, besides the Arizona win, they played 3 games last week. The last 2 were without Johnny Juzang and Jalen Clark and
Mhm.
COVID protocols, and they dominated both Cal and Stanford. And I guess their Cal and Stanford are not great, but dominating both those teams without 2 of your key rotation players and your star and Juzang, I think is a good marker for that team.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned Juzang, a guy like that can win you games in March. A guy like that can put teams on, as we saw him do last year, right? We saw him do that all throughout the tournament last year. When you have a guy like that, who's a top 5 player in college basketball right now, and you surround him with really solid depth and really solid pieces as well. UCLA is a team that I think is certainly a national title contender. They are one of those 10 teams I think that can for sure win the national title this year.
Yeah, now let's get to your conference here, the Big East, which has had some fun here. I mean, I'm pulling up the standings right now as of recording on Wednesday here. I mean, Providence is on top of the league, 9-1. They just beat St. John's last night. Villanova, 9-2. UConn, Marquette, Xavier, all ranked. Then you have like Creighton and Seton Hall sort of in that bubble area. Then the other, I'll get to St. John's. They're not in the picture right now, but like of that stack here, I mean, how many teams think this league can get in?
Yeah, I would say probably we're looking at possibly 7, a max of 7. I don't know if they'll get 7 in, but I think that, you look at, like we mentioned, Providence, Villanova, UConn, Marquette, Xavier, all ranked. And then you have Creighton and Seton Hall, who are, kind of trending on the bubble, maybe, middle to lower pack of that conference. I think that the dream would be getting 7 in. They'll probably end up with 6, I would say. But, we're kind of starting to define roles in the Big East a little bit. I think Villanova and Providence are kind of clearly at the top right now. That Providence team is really good. I watched them last night. I've seen a bunch of their games, of course. They're a really good team, and they just know how to execute. Like, they're so well coached. They never seem like the moment is too big. They played at a really tough environment and at St. John's last night. Never looked like they were, out of control or fazed by it at all. They know how to close games out. People said they're lucky, but they do execute at the end of these games, and they are winning these close games. You don't just go whatever it was 6 or 7-0 in games decided by 5 points or less by accident. I'm sure there's a little bit of luck there, but that's also execution. That's just knowing how to win games. So they're going to be a tough out for anyone in March. Villanova, of course, is out there, and then, like you mentioned, there's kind of that stretch of like UConn, Xavier, Marquette, teams that are ranked but maybe aren't at the top of the conference. Then you've got Seton Hall and Creighton, of course, who are maybe a little bit on the outside looking in terms of the best teams in the conference, but still certainly competitive for an NCAA tournament berth. And then you have my St. John's along with Butler, Georgetown, and DePaul, kind of taking up our residency at the bottom of the conference, which is where it feels like those teams have been for the last 2 decades or so. So very, very, very fun times in the Big East. We'll see how it shapes out, but it is kind of interesting how we're starting to define roles in the Big East, which was completely up in the air like 2 months ago. Now we kind of know who's there and who's not.
Yeah, I want to touch on your team for a minute because we talked in the non-conference play about how they did themselves no favors with their schedule, and now they basically had to pick up a bunch of good wins in the league. They're 3-6 in the Big East right now, and their only wins are home against DePaul, home against Georgetown, and at Seton Hall in the high school in the Walsh Gymnasium, which is by far their best win of the season. You had that in with the loss to Pittsburgh earlier this year, which is pretty bad. And I think the problem they're running into is here. I think they're probably going to do well against Georgetown and Butler, but then those games don't do anything for them. It's like you're looking at here this stretch, like Villanova at home, UConn at home, at Xavier again, Xavier, and then at Marquette, and not having that second Marquette game rescheduled right now, like that's one you really could use. And I think they better got to win like 4 or 5 of those to have any shot.
Yeah. I said this on my podcast last night about St. John's. They have all of these quad 1 opportunities in the Big East because the Big East is such a strong conference, as I mentioned, but they just haven't done anything yet that makes you think they're going to take advantage of those opportunities. They need to start stacking quad 1 wins. And as of right now, like you mentioned, they just have that one win over Seton Hall and Walsh, which is kind of looking more like an anomaly at this point, which is looking like, a really nice game for a mediocre to bad team in the Big East. So yeah, they haven't executed. And last night was a great example of that tie game with, 3.5 minutes to go. And they don't even get a shot up until the final possession or the final minute of the game. They go 2 minutes. They have 3 straight turnovers, losing a game at UConn when you're up by a point with 3 seconds left, and you can't get a stop there. Not being able to close out Providence on the road. There's been games this season where it's just, quad 1 opportunities for them. They just haven't taken advantage of them. And like we mentioned, when you have a really poor non-conference where you don't do yourself any favors, where you lose to Kansas, you lose to Indiana, you suffer a really bad loss to Pitt, and you don't really, you need to pick up a lot of quad 1 wins. You need to do a lot of work in the Big East, and that just hasn't been their MO really. Like I said, for the last 2 decades, they haven't played well in the Big East, and we're seeing it again this year. They're not able to close out games. They're just not executing at the end of games, and it's costing them. And right now, don't really see anything that makes me think they're going to turn it around in terms of getting onto the bubble and getting into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, now let's go. I think before we have a game we're going to play a little bit. First, I want to go to the fun recurring gag here on the podcast. Like, who gets more teams in here, the ACC or the West Coast Conference here? And this is something I actually got an answer to this. I actually submitted it online to John Rothstein's College Hoops Today podcast. He actually answered on the podcast a couple weeks ago. I did pull the audio, so here's what John had to say about this topic.
And our first question comes from Mike Phillips. And it's, John, who will get more bids to the NCAA tournament, the West Coast Conference or the ACC? The West Coast Conference is very well set up to have 4 teams, Gonzaga, BYU, San Francisco, and St. Mary's, get to the NCAA tournament. Miami's win does a lot for the ACC. Duke, Wake Forest, Miami, and North Carolina all look pretty solid. I think the ACC will have more, but I got to tell you, on January 10th, that's still an interesting question.
He did update this week in the podcast, sort of addressed the ACC again. He basically said, like, we're kind of still at 4 teams, and you see teams like Florida State waste opportunities. You see teams like Wake Forest lose questionable games, like going to Syracuse and getting their doors blown out. It's like, I think it might be a tie.
Yeah, it's fascinating that now we initially asked that question like a month and a half ago, and it's still kind of a legitimate debate here, like who's going to get more. I haven't looked at a ton of brackets yet because I don't know if it's really even worth it in early February. But yeah, you can make the case that the ACC doesn't break 4 teams getting in. Now the WCC as well. I mean, obviously Gonzaga is a lock, but you never know if one of those teams could slip up that are up there with them. I know San Francisco's dropped a couple of games, but yeah, like in terms of the ACC, like there's no guarantee that they get 5 in. I mean, of course, Duke is a lock. I think Miami will get in. And then, UNC probably, but then, Notre Dame, Wake Forest, Florida State, like you mentioned, not really taking advantage of opportunities. Do they get, 5 in? I don't know if that's realistic right now. So yeah, we could be trending towards a tie. I would still, think that the ACC has a shot to get 5, but I would say, yeah, it's fascinating to me that we're still having this conversation into February now, over the ACC and the WCC.
Yeah, I'm looking at Joe Lenardi's latest bracket on ESPN. He has 4 teams in each conference right now. He has North Carolina and San Francisco both in the last 4 buys from one from each conference. He has Florida State in his first 4 out, Notre Dame in his next 4 out. So those are the other 2 AC teams in that bracket. Gonzaga is a 1 seed in his bracket. I'm looking at the rest of this right now. Try and find this here. See who else is in this league that's worth mentioning. Miami is an 8 seed. I'm trying to see who else here. North Carolina is an 11. I'm trying to see here. St. Mary's is a 9. San Francisco, I believe, is also an 11. I'm going to double check my math on that one. I have to find where the 11s are on this field. And Wake Forest is an 8 seed as well.
Wake Forest been good this season. I've been surprised by them. They've had a really a renaissance season for them. At what are they, 7-4 right now in the ACC? They've been impressive for sure. They could be like the wild card that breaks the tie maybe if they're the number 5 team. Like it's just funny that the ACC is relying on like Notre Dame and Wake Forest to try to get them up to like 5 bids even. It's definitely a down year for that league for sure.
Yeah, Wake Forest, they just come off a 94-72 loss at Syracuse, and they 2 games before they beat North Carolina 98-76 at home. So who knows them?
Exactly. Another just classic college basketball team where you don't know what you're going to get night in and night out for sure.
All right, now we're going to have some fun here because I made some games because this is the time of year, you watch the college basketball a lot. You watch the halftime shows. You'll see that they do these blind resume games where they give you like team A, team B, here's some key numbers, here's some metrics. Like we're going to figure out like which team you would put in here. So you want to play this game? All right, so we're going to do 5 of these. So I made 5 of them. So I'm going to start out here. We're going to share them on the screen so the audience can see at home what's going on. So we're going to start with blind resume number 1. And for team A here, they are 15-6. These numbers are current as of Monday. So all numbers are current as of Monday, the graphics. Net is 37. The 37th ranked strength of schedule, 21st non-conference strength of schedule, 0-6 against quad 1 teams. Team B, 13-7 overall, net of 50. Strength schedule is 66, non-conference schedule 154, quad 1 is 154. Troy, if you were in the room, which team are you taking to go on the tournament?
Man, that 0-6 in quad 1, really is not impressive. The other team is 1-4 though as well. It's close in the net. The strength of schedule is in the favor of the team A as well. I'd probably, even though they do not have a quad 1 win, just because their opponent only has 1, I'm going to go with team A if I had to pick one of these 2.
All right. So just to clarify here, I also made the answers here. I'm going to put that up here now so the audience can see which one you picked, which resume you selected. So congratulations. North Carolina is going to the tournament.
I had an idea team A was North Carolina. I know that they were 0-6 in quad 1. I had an idea that was going to be UNC. Yeah, I would take them over Mississippi State at this point.
in Mississippi State. The one thing I think is fascinating in the North Carolina debate is I'm gonna look at their schedule online, just like the quad one games North Carolina has played. They have not been very good at them. I mean, you look at their losses here. I mean, since we did this graph, they picked up a win here. They've lost 93-84 to Purdue, lost 89-72 against Tennessee, lost 98-69 against Kentucky. They lost to Wake Forest 98-76, lost to Miami 85-57, and their closest loss is at Notre Dame by 5. So they've been being blown out by all the good teams.
Yeah, they've got a big opportunity this weekend against Duke. That's going to be a big one for them. So, yeah, I mean, as we said, I just mentioned with St. John's, you got to start stacking some quad one wins. That's what the committee looks at. That's what helps your net rating to be, as of that graphic, 0-6. Doesn't exactly bode well for UNC if that's going to continue.
All right, let's go to number 2 here. So this is Team A, Team B. Mm-hmm. Team A, 13-7 overall, net of 58, 76th ranked strength of schedule, 66th non-conference, 2-4 in quad one. Team B, 12-7, net of 73, 57th ranked strength of schedule, 249th in the non-conference, 3-5 in quad one. Troy, who goes to the field?
I want to take Team B just because they have a couple. Their quad one record is slightly better. But that non-conference strength of schedule, man, 249. Oof. I'll go with Team A again. I like that, they only do have one less quad one win. Strength of schedule is somewhat comparable, better net. I'll take Team A in this one as well.
All right. So now we're going to find out who Troy picked once again for the tournament. So he's already put North Carolina in the field, and this is one thing you'll be interested in to see who you ended up taking here. So Team A is the Oregon Ducks. They have those big wins over UCLA and USC on the road. Those are the 2 quad one wins. And the other team is Creighton.
I would not have thought that their strength schedule in non-conference was that bad. But yeah, I'm a big Oregon guy. I picked them to go to the Final Four last year, actually. They were like one of my sleeper teams last year. I love Oregon always. It's a different type of season for them this year. They're a little bit on the bubble, but yeah, I guess I would go with Oregon over Creighton. That makes sense to me.
All right, let's go to number 3 here. We're going to have another one up here as I made 5 total. So blind resume number 3. And again, sharing these on the screen for the YouTube version. And if people want to see this, just again, go to the YouTube channel, Mike Phillips on YouTube. You can pop these up here and see what's going on. So let me just check off of this. See, I got to close this. I switched the order on these the last second. So bear with me, people at home. So, all right. So Team A, 15-3 overall, a net of 35. Strength of schedule is 149, 194th in the non-conference, 1-2 in quad one. Team B, 17-5, net of 43. Strength of schedule is 74, non-conference 319, and they're 1-3 in quad one.
Man, either one of those strength of schedules are very impressive, but the nets are up there for both of these teams. I'm going to take Team A again. Same number of quad one wins, relatively same number of opportunities. Yeah, I'm going to go with Team A again in this one.
All right, so you're going with Team A here on this one here. So let me go ahead and put that one up there for you so we can take a look here at the answer to this question. And I think you'll be interested in who you picked because, again, this is a surprising one. Team A is Wyoming and Team B is Wake Forest.
Okay, interesting. All right. Yeah, Wyoming's a team that's really been under the radar this season. Of course, playing in the Mountain West and not exactly playing in East Coast friendly start times. Yeah, that's an interesting one. I like Wake Forest, like I mentioned. I really want to see them make the tournament. I wish I would have gone with Team B actually, but yeah, that's going to be an interesting one as well. Wyoming, they're going to be an interesting case as well because, like you mentioned, that strength of schedule isn't really going to get all that much better, playing in that conference. So that'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, and Wake Forest, the 319 strength of schedule in non-conference, I think that's, again, a thing where they were sort of a year ahead of schedule, so they didn't schedule aggressively, think they need to secure an at-large bid, and now that can be a problem for them.
Exactly. I was going to say that's probably, a team that didn't really think that they had those NCAA tournament aspirations and didn't really have to schedule that great in the non-conference, and now when you're on the bubble, it kind of comes back to bite you a little bit.
Yeah, and Wyoming, a big win against Colorado State on Monday, so they are trending in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
All right, 2 more to go here. So now we are going to blind resume number 4. Are you enjoying this game?
I love it. I want to pick a Team B. Hopefully I'll get a Team B in this one.
All right. So here is question number 4. Team A, 13-7 overall, net of 64. Strength of schedule, 16th overall, 73rd non-conference, 2-6 in quad one. Team B, 16-4 overall, a net of 39, 157th strength of schedule, 159th in non-conference, just 1-2 against quad one.
Right away, I'm thinking that Team A is a power conference team and Team B is probably a mid-major, just looking at these numbers. I'm going to give Team A the advantage again. The net isn't crazy different. That strength of schedule is outrageous. 16 against 157. Way more quad one opportunities for Team A. So I'm going to take Team A with the assumption that it is probably a power conference team.
Well, you are correct as a power conference team. This power conference team did lose again since I made this graphic. So I'm going to go ahead here and throw up the answer here. You have chosen to take West Virginia, who is now 13-8 since we did this, and Team B is Chattanooga out of the SoCon.
Yeah. Just looking at those numbers, you could tell it was a Power 5 against a mid-major type school. Yeah, I mean, I can't say I know a whole lot about Chattanooga. But that's a team that's gotta stack up as many wins as they can. The net will be favorable. If you keep winning, you're gonna keep moving up. So yeah, if they can keep stacking up wins, Chattanooga get to like 22, 23 wins, they've got a legitimate case, because the thing about bubble teams is they're inconsistent. They're going to lose games. So if you keep winning games, even if you're in a lower conference, you're going to have a shot at least, just because a lot of bubble teams are gonna get picked off and slip up down the road here in February.
Yeah, and I will say in terms of West Virginia, I want to mention here at the end, it's like they're sort of that spot where the league is brutal and they're playing a lot of good games. But at some point, you got to start winning some of those.
Yeah, exactly. It's like like we mentioned with St. John's. You have all these opportunities. Got to take advantage of them. You got to start winning some of them. Like we mentioned, was that 2-6 in quad one. That's you got to pick up some quad one opportunities when they are presented to you. And if you don't, it really doesn't help. It doesn't help you just playing those quad one games.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the last one. And I did this I think you're gonna have a lot of fun with this one in particular, because the numbers are very close in a lot of areas. So Team A, 16-5 overall. The net is 46, 96 strength of schedule, 269th in the non-conference, 1-3 in quad one. Team B, 18-3, 57 in the net, 121st strength of schedule, 22nd in the non-conference, 1-3 in quad one. Who are you taking?
Wow, yeah. Look at that. The strength of schedule, 121 and then 22 in the non-conference. I like Team B actually. 18-3. The nets are comparable. Their strength of schedule is a little bit worse, but I would reward them for playing a tough non-conference. The 22nd ranked strength of schedule as opposed to 269, and the quad ones are identical. So I'm going to go with Team B in this one.
So you finally got a Team B.
I did.
All right. And now I'm going to tell you which team B you ended up picking. I think you'll be surprised by this one a little bit. So let's go ahead and throw it up there. You took the Iona Gales as Team B.
Look at that. Wow. What a coincidence that is, huh?
And Team A is Arkansas.
Yeah. Honestly, looking at this, yeah, that boosts the Iona at large bid a little bit more. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Obviously, they scheduled it really tough in the non-conference for sure, and their strength of schedule in conference is certainly gonna go down. But yeah, I mean, Arkansas has not really been all that impressive to me. They haven't looked great, and Iona, 18-3. What are they, undefeated in the conference? They got to keep stacking up conference wins for sure, and that net will continue to improve. And yeah, that's an interesting one actually. I'm glad that I picked Iona. Actually, I'm very, very happy about that.
Yeah, I'm glad I put that in there. I switched the order for a reason. I didn't want to, because I wanted to lead into the Iona debate here, because obviously they are right now 10-0 in the MAC. They are 18-3 overall, and the debate has always been like, if they can run the table in the MAC and they can go 20-0 in the regular season, and they afford a loss in the conference tournament and get in as an at-large. And I think the longer they go without losing games, and I'd look their schedule ahead, they have their toughest stretch here is the February 11th at Siena, games at ESPNU. February 13th, they host Monmouth. And then February 15th, the third game in a row, is a makeup game at St. Peter's. If they get through that undefeated, I think they have a good chance to run the table in the league.
Yeah, it's like you mentioned. I think that their best case as an at-large is to go 20-0, maybe 19-1, but you gotta win 19 or 20 games in the conference, and then go into your conference tournament with like 3 or 4 losses. You obviously have that big win against Alabama, like we mentioned. You want Alabama to continue winning. Yeah, I think that they have a case, as we just showed there. They certainly, their resume, I would say, stacks up well because they did schedule really, really tough in the non-conference. You do wish that they had that opportunity to play that Seton Hall game. I really think that that's gonna come back and not bite them, but I think that that's gonna be a tough one, because that would have been another opportunity against the team Seton Hall that's right on the bubble, that's right maybe in that NCAA tournament picture. If they would have been able to get a win in that one, it was a big opportunity for them at Madison Square Garden. That would have been another win that they could stack on their resume as a really impressive win. Not having that opportunity really stinks. But yeah, if they go like 20-0 in the conference, or even 19-1, and like win a conference tournament game, or losing the MAC title game, they have a real case, and they do have a legitimate shot at an at-large, which is really great for them, of course. But that's the debate every year. I feel like we see is this a 28-win low mid-major conference team that lost in their title game versus a team that has 12 or 13 losses but plays in the SEC or the Big 12. It's a debate that really has no answer. It seems like the committee usually favors the power conference teams, but if you just keep winning, if you're Iona, you do more and more and more that they can't keep you out if you do happen to stumble in the conference tournament.
Yeah, it's like this would be sort of like, I thought the Arkansas one was interesting. And I'm looking at Joe Lenardi's bracket in terms of where the Razorbacks are. I'm looking at the field. I mean, Iona right now, I think it's a 12 seed in his East field, taking out Marquette in the first round. That'd be a fun game.
Yeah, exactly. And just in terms of, if you go 19-1, 20-0 in your conference, and then win the conference tournament, you go into to March with 3 or 4 losses, and 28, 29 wins or something like that. You're going to get a better seed. You're not going to be playing in that 2-15 or 3-14 matchup. You're going to get like an 11-12 seed. Not only do you have a winnable first game, but then you have a winnable second game as well. So that's the goal for Iona, I think, would be to not only make the tournament, but to win a tournament game this season. They've been knocking at the door a couple times. This is probably their best shot at actually winning a tournament game with Pitino, of course. And the better that they play now in this next month and a half, the better shot that they're going to have a more favorable matchup in the tournament.
Yeah, and Arkansas is rated as a 9 seed right now by Joe Lenardi, and they have 2 questionable losses on their resume. They lost to Hofstra on a neutral floor, who Iona did beat earlier this season. They lost to Vanderbilt at home. So those are 2 question marks on their resume, but they are in a much safer spot at this point.
Yeah, I think that's too high for Arkansas personally. I don't know if they're that safe in the tournament, but they play in a tough conference. Like we always say, they're gonna get a lot of opportunities to continue building that resume.
Yeah, look at Arkansas' schedule down the stretch. I think after they play this Georgia game, I think 9 of their final 9 games are against tournament teams.
Yeah,
or bubble teams, because it's Mississippi State, Auburn, at Alabama. They have the Missouri trip, which is a nothing burger. Then they have Tennessee at Florida, Kentucky, LSU at Tennessee.
Yeah, those are opportunities. That's all you can ask for if you're on the bubble right now, is opportunity, but got to take advantage of them. As a St. John's fan, I know when you don't take advantage of opportunity, it doesn't really do much for you at all. So definitely got to take advantage of those if you're Arkansas.
Yeah, we'll definitely play the blind resume again next time we come on here, because I'm sure we'll have more compelling resumes towards the end of February into March. And I think I want to talk here about some interesting games coming up here on this Saturday, which there's a lot of great games on tap for Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Just looking at the schedule here, I mean, staying in the Big East, my favorite conference. My team plays in the Big East. Big game at noon, UConn and Villanova at the Wells Fargo Center in Philly. That's a fun matchup, kind of a throwback Big East matchup. Feels like both of those teams have their claim for the tops near the top of the Big East. That's a really fun game, and I'm really looking forward to seeing UConn and Nova. Of course, we have Baylor and Kansas. That's going to be a really interesting game as well. Like we mentioned, Kansas, stumbled over the weekend, then kind of finds their footing. Baylor did the same. They stumbled over the weekend as well. So that's a really fun matchup at the top of the Big 12. So those are my two big games that I'm picking, at least this weekend.
Yeah, I like those games well. Some other ones I'll throw out here. USC going to Arizona on Saturday, and we'll find out how good the Trojans actually are here, because they've not played many good teams. So we'll see how they do here. Duke, Carolina, obviously the rivalry is tremendous. Coach K's last trip to the Dean Dome, and we'll see if North Carolina can get up for this game, not get blown out by 25 points. That would be nice.
How about an underrated game at 10 o'clock at night? Gonzaga BYU. That's always fun. BYU seems like they're always that one team that can kind of give Gonzaga some trouble. That's like a fun little nightcap. You get 12 hours of college basketball. That's a fun one at night for sure.
Yeah, I'll squeeze one in there between Duke, Carolina, and Gonzaga, BYU. Kentucky going to Alabama. Which version of the Crimson Tide shows up?
Yeah, exactly. That's another fun one as well in the SEC. Kentucky's up to number 5 now. Yeah, well, we'll see if Alabama can continue this trend of knocking off these top-ranked teams.
And they're at home, so I would love to like that's what I'll be betting the Crimson Tide on Saturday. I feel like that's the kind of game they're going to show up and like either be right in or win.
Yeah, exactly. That's the type. If we can read the trends on Alabama, that's the type of game that they would probably win.
Yeah, absolutely, Troy. Thanks for all the time. Really appreciate it. Before I let you go, I'll be a follow on social media and keep up with the Seeing Red podcast.
Definitely, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Troy Mauriello. Last name is Mauriello. Yeah, I do the Seeing Red podcast about once a week. We talk about St. John's basketball and the Big East as a whole. Yeah, and so if you're a St. John's fan, if you're a Big East fan, college hoops fan, definitely check it out.